Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do another complete quantum reversal of a video of Maylor's called Message to Visionaries. This one sent me for a loop because it was so much different than the previous quantum reversal, which I did in short phrase sections. It's another one where I originally tried to do a full quantum reversal, which means just transcribing the entire video in forward mode, then copying it and doing the complete uninterrupted reverse translation. However, the first time I did it, I could not get any results. Then when I tried it again this time, it became much clearer to me. So it began to make me wonder what is happening and if there is some kind of explanation for it. I realized that by cutting it into shorter phrases, it would cause the translation to take different paths, but even the paths in the forward mode were changing so much, I had to check it out on YouTube and see if there is an explanation that might help. Here is a clip from a video made by PBS Digital Studio that talks a little bit about quantum waves.
Let's start with a rubber ducky. It bobs up and down in a pool, causing periodic ripples to spread out. Some distance away, those waves encounter a barrier with two gaps cut in it. Most of the wave is blocked, but ripples pass through the gaps. When the new ripples start to overlap each other, they produce this really cool pattern. It's called an interference pattern. It's due to the fact that in some places, the peak of the ripple from one gap stacks on top of the peak from the other gap, making a more extreme peak. You also get more extreme dips when two troughs overlap. We call this constructive interference. But when the peak from one wave encounters the trough from another, they cancel out, leaving nothing. Destructive interference. So we have these alternating tracks of wavy and flat water. Any type of wave should make an interference pattern like this. For example, water waves and sound waves, but also light waves.
So in the forward part of this translation, Maylor talks about the change as if he knows it's going to happen and says, "Ready, Ryan? We'll have some changes. For people know in the quantum, a certain percent is scrambled up. They'll input and have to table it with changes of my stream of words." Camera like that so close. Here's a little bit more of that same video that gets into it a little bit further.
Particle-like at either end, but wave-like in between. That wave holds the information about all the possible final positions of the particle, but also about its possible positions at every stage in the journey. In fact, the wave must map out all possible paths that the particle could take. We have this family of could-be trajectories from start to finish. And for some reason, when the wave reaches the screen, it chooses a final location. And that implies choosing from these possible paths. So what causes this transition between a wave of many possibilities and a well-defined thing at a particular spot?
So it only makes sense that there are many different ways to interpret the information of a wave file. For example, if I cut a longer wave into shorter sections, their destination would be different than the complete file, and they would contain different information. In part 2, Maylor talks a little bit about our daughter Kayla, and how we would not lecture her on something that she can't formulate. He also mentions how trivial things often lack attention. So in part 2 he says, "Your Kayla will have a lot to learn from the things here. She'll be growing with God's garden near a river. Do you plan to lecture her on what she can't formulate? What is trivial will lack some attention. So, looking forward, we'll raise a mountain with all the things that Kayla will do. It's later brought up very spiritually when you have a more trusting forum. It's true when Maylor says that Kayla will be brought up by a river and a garden. We have them both at the trailer slant cottage. The river actually runs through the backyard. So it was kind of odd that Maylor began talking about Kayla, which seemed to come out of nowhere. Perhaps he was using her as an example for the point he was trying to make. Linda and I know that Kayla has a mild form of ADD, which is attention deficit disorder. As a result, she often refuses to pay attention to things that are trivial to her, but when she wants to, she can spend hours concentrating on things that she really likes, especially when she has a goal in mind. Here's a clip that talks about that.
I've seen thousands of patients with ADD, little kids, teenagers, and adults. And what I can tell you is that every one of them has a few things they can pay attention to very, very well. It might be playing a sport. It might be playing video games. It might be making art. It might be doing Lego constructions when they're little, and then when they're older, taking car engines apart and putting them back together, designing computer networks. But everybody I've ever seen who has ADHD has a few things like that where they can pay attention perfectly well and utilize all these skills that I'm talking about, even though they have a lot of trouble in doing the same thing in other places.
And then he continues in part 3 saying, reality comes when we know the facts. It won't shut the door on what will be accepted seriously. One day the world is led to the light because your report favors more progress for things they are hearing. It might distort the facts if they will not hear something they're looking for. If the passion they have will not show they do not feel compassion, then they lack some event that is very real. In part 4, Maylor says, changes that we could allow in this religion shall be a part of your passive inventory. You're bound to find what you're looking for if you look for a change of heart. Something for enjoyment in you doesn't fear what's awaiting beyond every door when we know it helps. Humans clearly have freedom looking for every passion. If it causes problems, we could not favor one's passions. We'll review what's better in a spiritual fashion. Most will be employed with prophecy. you finished? When you're done, just say I'm finished. So now we'll move on to part 1 of the reverse mode, where he says, where actually I start off by saying, there might be a problem if you challenge who, and then Maylor says, is really not ready. We've got to show respectful and spiritual choices for them. We need you to be understanding and open every time that fear is appearing. And then I say, being nice is not enough. And then Maylor says, some progress you have made has begun to happen real quick if you realize your options. If they're serious and try, they will believe in their heart it's right. Why don't you come closer to the camera and talk in the camera? You might get so much now. And if not, it's not, you know. Yeah, I know that last part was quite hard to understand, but personally I choose to believe most of what I've translated there, although there is some interference. I think part 2 of reverse is clearer, and he says, so Ryan, you'll be okay. There are people who will think you're insane. There are people who know you're loving. You are seriously having a reason for sadness and confusion spiritually. And then I say, I shall not fear. And then Maylor says, and you will never leave us running from prophecy during this effort. You'll have trust in how often we will help make your life a journey with God. Seen it for you. In part 3 of Reverse, he says, most of you carry some problems you'll have lurking spiritually from your past life. You'll be able to fix it in heaven. If you elect to carry problems, we will know you are not properly acclimated with a spiritual inventory. If you are suffering and you're spiritually confused, you will give in and try to get some help. Just knowing there is evil threatening your progress can give your soul peace. And nothing is trickery if you really believe you have enough time to absolve your spiritual sanity. Yes, I know there's a lot there to think about, especially on my part, so I'll leave it at that and move on to the final part 4 of Reverse Mode, where he says, we know Ryan will try to let go and have further results despite his challenges from evil that's lurking. We are really everlasting and have people who learn to evolve like him and accept the challenge. And then I say, the soul has a journey. This completes his presentation. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to join us, you can come to theangelscrolls.com and click onto the forum link at the top, where we will be adding the newest presentations. Bye for now.